may be drafting the wrong wide receivers. And look, I get it. These guys have the flashy names. And maybe they helped you win your league in the past, but in 2023, they're major avoids. I mean, assuming you actually want to win your league. Now, let's start with a guy who makes his return to football this fall. And that would be Calvin Ridley, who is now a Jacksonville Jaguar and was suspended for all of 2022. Now, despite this, he still goes as the wide receiver 16 in drafts, ahead of guys like Amari Cooper, a top 10 receiver last year, and right next to DK Metcalf. This is a mistake because Ridley has major questions. This right here, in 2021 week 7, was the last time we saw Calvin Ridley play football. 19 months from this recording, and will be 23 months by the time week 1 kicks off. And in that last time that we saw him in 2021, he ranked 72nd in yards per route run, wide receiver efficiency, which was a 40% drop from his massive 2020 year. So he already wasn't looking good in 2021, which again was 2 years ago. Ridley has now lost literally the 2 final years of his prime, as he's already 28 years old. But that's not all, because now Ridley joins a new team, and in general, wide receiver switching teams isn't great, especially as they're older, but this competition is pretty tough. It starts with Christian Kirk, who was 15th in wide receiver usage last year and top 20 in efficiency, also hasn't missed any games the last 2 years. Then there's Zay Jones, who was 18th in wide receiver usage last year, and he's missed just 1 game the last 3 years. And let's not forget Evan Ingram, who Jacksonville brought back this year. He was, look at these metrics, 3rd in receptions, 4th in receiving yards, 2nd in yards after the catch, overall top 5 in tight end usage last year. Ingram is literally coming off of a career year, so this is really tough competition for Calvin Ridley. Now, the good news is Ridley is just coming off of a suspension. There was no physical injury that he's recovering from. He did have some mental health issues, but he appears to be over those for now. But unfortunately, he's 2 years older, and now he's lost a lot of his prime. I'd rather have these guys who go after him, Amari Cooper and Najee Harris. Now, for this next wide receiver, let's slide over to the NFC. And we'll be talking about the new Bears wide receiver, DJ Moore, and exactly why he's an avoid. Well, for starters, he joins the Chicago offense that ranked 32nd in passing plays per game last year. Just 22.2 is actually 10% worse than every single other team. And that's from the 31st ranked team, they were 10% worse, even greater than every other team. Now, here's what you should know. Mobile quarterbacks are going to lower the ceiling in production of wide receivers because they're stealing touchdowns on the ground, yardage, and in general, it means you're probably in a rushing offense. And the Bears have arguably the #1 mobile quarterback in the NFL. Last year, he definitely was, with over 1,100 rushing yards, nearly 400 more than any other player, averaging 76.2 rush yards per game. And not only did he lead Chicago in rushing yards, but he also had 8 rushing scores. So yeah, this guy is absolutely fantastic. And like we said, mobile quarterbacks will lower the upside of the wide receiver, being DJ Moore. Another negative is that Fields ranked just 19th in deep attempts last year, which isn't great because DJ Moore has been top 10 in deep targets since 2020. He thrives on volume and downfield usage. And the volume is going to be a big question mark this year because last year, the Bears target leader was Darnell Mooney, only 61 targets, and that's while missing 5 games. He averaged just 5.1 targets per game. And that type of volume, about 5 targets per game, would be a 27% drop from DJ Moore's usage last year, where he saw 118 targets. And look at how productive this guy has been. 118 or more targets each of the last 4 seasons, and now you can expect that to drop. So I would prefer basically all of these guys who go right after DJ Moore at the wide receiver position. Definitely Drake London, Terry McLaurin, yes, definitely Christian Kirk, and definitely Chris Godwin. Take them instead. Now let's talk about a wide receiver who was drafted this year in the 1st round. The first receiver taken at a top 20 pick, Jackson Smith-Njigba to Seattle. Now he goes in that similar range that we were just talking about, right around Chris Godwin and Michael Pittman. He's going in round 5 as the wide receiver 30 in drafts. He's actually taken ahead of his teammate Tyler Lockett, and this is a mistake because last year the Seattle Seahawks on 1st down ranked 1st in the NFL, running 12 personnel 40% of the time. Now, what is 12 personnel? Simply put, for this scenario, 12 personnel means only 2 wide receivers are on the field. Now, this matters because it likely means Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be off the field often for Seattle because DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett will stay on the field unless you believe he's going to beat out Tyler Lockett, which seems unlikely because last year Tyler Lockett was still great. He was 5th overall in win rate versus man coverage, still getting open. And his efficiency, his yards per route run, was 26th, which is very good out of every single receiver in the league. And that number should probably be even higher because Tyler Lockett falls down after the catch. He doesn't try and get yards after the catch to avoid injuries. He probably really was a top 15 wide receiver in efficiency. And it also doesn't help JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, that Lockett's only missed 3 games in his entire NFL career. Now, obviously, JSN is great. I mean, he was a top 20 pick, and this is what he did while playing next to Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson at Ohio State. Over 1,600 yards on 112 targets. He was is fantastic. But figuring out where he finds playing time, especially in 2 wide receiver sets, is going to be the concern here. I'd rather have Chris Godwin and Christian Kirk who go right around him. Now for this next wide receiver avoid, we go to a player who was a rookie last year but didn't see a lot of playing time. And that would be Jameson Williams, the first round pick, 12th overall pick from the Lions last year, and he currently goes in round 9. He actually goes ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster, which is interesting because Juju's his team's #1 receiver, and Jameson is going to miss his first 6 games. And he's going to miss those 6 games not because of injury, but because of suspension. They suspended him and 4 of his teammates for violating gambling policy, so he gambled, and now he's going to miss the first 6 games. And this is a shame because we really didn't get to see him at all last year. He only played in 6 games, saw just 9 targets, and he had 1 catch. It actually was a 40-yard touchdown, though. He was working his way back from an ACL tear that he suffered in college, so Detroit was very cautious with him. As you can see by his snap shares, just 10%, 19. As you go down here, 17, 14. They never went over 25%, and he never ran more than 9 routes in a game. Now, Williams is also smaller in size, just 177 pounds, which isn't great for the NFL, and generally speaking, rookies who don't play a lot in their first year, it doesn't translate to future success. And now you throw a 6-game suspension on top of that. It's just hard for this guy to get experience. I'm going to be taking these guys who go right after him instead. Juju at the wide receiver position, and at the running back position, Brian Robinson and A.J. Dillon I'd rather have here. Now let's take a look at an Arizona Cardinals wide receiver, and that would be Marquise Hollywood Brown, who's in a tough spot because he currently goes in round 7 ahead of guys like Deontay Johnson. And now I think this is a mistake, but it's going to actually get worse, and that's because of this information right here. The Cardinals cut DeAndre Hopkins, which is probably going to push Marquise Brown somewhere into the top 30 of drafts, around these guys: Christian Kirk, Drake London, Chris Godwin, wide receiver ones on their team that, in my opinion, are in better spots for one reason or another. I won't be shocked if we see Hollywood jump into the 4th or 5th round, and this is a mistake because Kyler Murray is expected to miss likely at least half the season this year, which means there's going to be a backup quarterback in play. And as you can see from Sports MD Analysis on Twitter, he talks about Kyler Murray, but this bottom part is what you need to know. This was an ACL tear. He's estimating at least week 8 to 12 for a return, but even then, it's going to be something that is going to affect him. So half the year, at least maybe 2/3 of the year, you're never really getting a full Kyler Murray. And this is bad news because look at these splits right here. In 8 games with Kyler Murray, Marquise Brown averaged 15.9 points and 10 overall targets per game. And then in the 4 games without, just 7.2 points and 6.75 targets. So expect a career low season for Brown this year. Avoid him and this next AFC receiver. And that would be George Pickens, who right now currently goes in round 6, and he actually often goes ahead of Treylon Burks and even his teammate Deontay Johnson, which just doesn't make any sense to me. Because in his rookie season, he ranked just 87th in target rate, his ability to earn targets per route run, meaning he just wasn't able to get open. Meanwhile, Treylon Burks, who often goes after Pickens in drafts, ranked 31st in this same exact metric. But let's keep going because Pickens still has strong competition in his receiving corps. And a lot of that comes from this man right here, Deontay Johnson, who, like we said, goes after him in drafts somehow right now. Because since 2019, when Deontay entered the league, he ranks 4th in targets right now. He knows how to get open and earn targets. The only guys above him, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Devontae Adams. Translation, Deontay is the alpha #1 receiver here. Now, one more thing. Pickens, of course, has the talent to break out. Really, he was just used improperly last year on the outside. But this did lead to him seeing targets downfield. His average depth of target, 3rd in the NFL, and he saw the 7th most deep targets. And very quietly, his quarterback Kenny Pickett, who wasn't great overall, he was at least good targeting players downfield of 20+ yards, 9th in the NFL in deep ball accuracy. So assuming his role stays the same, there's at least some boom bust upside, but based on his volume projection, the targets we expect him to see, he goes about a round too early. And speaking of going too early in drafts, let's talk about Elijah Moore, who's a clear avoid this year. We can bring it back to his rookie year when people fell in love with him because he was producing. He was actually 9th overall in the NFL amongst all receivers, not just rookies, in route win rate versus man coverage. He knows how to get open and earn targets. And this is how good this guy was. Before he was getting injured in week 13 his rookie year, from week 7 to 13, so 6 weeks, only Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, and Justin Jefferson had more points than Elijah Moore. So this is why a lot of people were excited about him last year and why they still have some hope for this year. But in 2022, it was not good. It was nowhere near his rookie year in that 6-week stretch that we saw, and you can see for yourself. Because in his target rate, his ability to earn routes per target, just getting open and earning targets, running good routes, 100th in the NFL out of all wide receivers, behind guys like Samori Toure, like a wide receiver 5 for the Packers, DeAndre Carter, who's like 34 years old. This is not good news. Now, despite this, Elijah Moore still goes pretty early in round 8, ahead of guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, often goes ahead of Cortland Sutton. And here's what you need to know. If you don't know already, Elijah Moore is now a Brown and will likely play the slot, meaning he's going to come off the field in 2 wide receiver sets. And the target competition will definitely be there. Of course, Amari Cooper's there, David Njoku is there, somebody that the Browns have a lot invested into, and Donovan Peoples-Jones and new acquired rookie Cedric Tillman will also be involved. So it's a similar situation in New York in terms of there's a lot of competition and a lot of guys out there earning targets, which isn't good because Elijah Moore ranked 92nd in points per game last year. I don't expect it to be that bad, but it's just something to think about. This is not his rookie season Elijah Moore that we saw last year. And another big question is Deshaun Watson, who's coming off of a career low year. He actually ranked amongst all quarterbacks last year last in quarterback efficiency, just 6.5 yards per attempt. The average for this number is like 7.2, and good quarterbacks are above 7.5. He was well below that. So those quarterback concerns aren't going to help Elijah Moore either. Draft some of those players that we talked about earlier, A.J. Dillon, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Brian Robinson in this range instead. Now, there's one more player that I think is really interesting. Some people think he's going to have a breakout year this year, and some people like myself think you need to avoid him. But before we get there, I want to quickly let you know about the fantasy blueprint that if you want to win your league and beat your friends, this is the tool you need. It has everything you need to take home a fantasy championship this year, and to get it, you just follow the link in the description below into 2 simple steps. And let's make this clear. If you don't make your fantasy playoffs with this material, I will refund your minimum deposit of $5 to $10 depending on when you're watching that, completely risk-free, this blueprint. So go ahead and take advantage of this limited time offer and get the blueprint down below. Now let's talk Rashad Bateman. Some people think he is going to break out this year, and I believe that he is not worth the risk. Because reminder, in October of last year, he ended up suffering a foot injury and he had to have Liz Frank surgery, which takes about 12 months to recover from. And we rely on Sports MD Analysis on Twitter again here for the Rashad Bateman analysis. He says data suggests a production dip until late October, which means you're probably looking somewhere around 7 or 8 weeks without getting a peak form Rashad Bateman, somebody who's limited, and that's not great. And despite this, he's still drafted ahead of guys like Courtland Sutton, and this isn't his only concern. The injury? No, it's not the only one. Because now Bateman has some real competition. They signed Odell Beckham Jr. He makes 5 times more now than any other receiver on this team. Baltimore also drafted first-round wide receiver Zay Flowers, who was ultra productive in college and has a real shot to be the #1 receiver on this team. And let's not forget their great tight end room with Isaiah Likely and, of course, Mark Andrews, who's led this team in targets, not just for tight ends, every player on the team since 2020. So simply put, pass on Bateman in round 8. These are the wide receivers that you want to be passing on, but there's also running backs you need to avoid. They have red flags this year. And to see exactly who those 7 running backs are, well, you can check out this video that I produced for you, beautiful people, right over here. Now, to ensure that you keep up with all the relevant information to beat your friends and win your league, make sure you're also subscribed to this YouTube channel.